Hi, I'm JD, and welcome to my devlog. I just recently graduated with a degree in robotics, and I've always had a passion for game design, as long as I've been coding. I've built a bunch of games in college for game design classes and clubs, and I've been waiting to join the indie dev community for a long time. And now that I've graduated, I finally have enough free time to do it, with graduating, quarantine, and all that stuff. So, welcome to my first devlog for Agraria. Agraria is a 2D mobile survival game that I'm making with Unity. Whenever I try playing mobile games with complicated movement and actions, it tends to look like this, a bunch of complicated joysticks and buttons. I really enjoy survival base building games like Minecraft or Rust, and I wanted to build my own take on it for mobile. Agraria is about starting from nothing and then building your base, then a village, then a town, and then a kingdom. It's easy to take care of yourself in a survival game, but what about an entire kingdom? This way, the difficulty of the game is dependent on how many villagers you're willing to govern. The game will incorporate a lot of other popular survival mechanics, such as farming, crafting, and socialization. I really wanted to make a survival base builder that implemented innovative mobile controls and used chunk-based world loading. So, if I boot up the game, as you can see, we have a bunch of chunks in a radius that we can see and that are sort of spawned in. So, we can see the tiles, entities are moving around, and as we move through the map, you can see that chunks are being loaded and unloaded. See? And also, if I zoom in, you can see that the chunks aren't really that big. They're only like 5 tiles by 5 tiles, and they're pretty small. And this is just to make it run as efficiently as possible on mobile devices. Now, chunk loading is handled by the grid manager. The grid manager generates chunks and controls whether or not they're activated or deactivated. Chunks store references to all of the entities, blocks, and background tiles in that chunk. Entities are objects that update each step. They are active and move around, such as, NPCs, enemies. Blocks are static objects that update on certain events, such as, rocks and trees, where they only really need to update when they're loaded in or when they're hit by something. And then background tiles are static objects that don't update on every step. These are just like the grass and dirt right here in the background. I'm not sure what size the map will be yet, or whether it will be procedurally generated or tailored, but right now everything is procedurally generated using simple Perlin noise. This just makes things simple for me right now, just to see all of the elements together and see how they function. As you can see, the shades on these background tiles differ slightly from one another. I use Perlin noise to do it just to make it look a little bit less uniform, and also the trees and rocks are placed randomly by Perlin noise. What we do is that for each tile in a chunk, we get the Perlin value, and then what we can do is that we can just check if the Perlin value, exceeds a certain threshold, then we'll place a tree there, or a rock, or a goose. Next, I want to look at the UI. If we look at the UI, you can see that it is designed to be played vertically with one thumb, instead of horizontally with both thumbs. There's one joystick in the center for movement, like this, and there are bars on either side for controlling the items in either hand. So you can see I can cycle through the items, right? So I don't have many items, but I will loop around. Now, so these items are both in your hotbar, and what you can do is that by pressing these buttons, you can use the items. So if it's an axe, you can hit a tree, boom, and I get some wood. If it's a block, you can place the block. If it's just an item, you just drop the item. And these are the only types of items I've implemented, but in the future, I'll be adding more. And you can see that also we have a little button up here for the inventory. So right now, we have our inventory, we can move things around, and this area up here with the 8 slots is our hotbar. These are the items that we're going to be able to cycle through with our hands. These will be like your blocks, your tools, your weapons, your consumables, that sort of stuff. And then we have a much larger inventory down here where you can keep things like your resources that you won't necessarily need to pull up in your hotbar for use. We have a little crafting bar right now with some of the items, like the blocks we can craft, and an upgraded crafting tool. And we also have an equipment tab, but that one's not implemented yet because we don't have any equipment. So I can show you how crafting works. So if I just go around and hit some trees, boom, I'll get some damage on them. You can see I get wood and plant fiber, but if I go over here and I start hitting some rocks, you can see they'll start taking damage, and eventually, this takes a little bit, boom, harvested a rock. So now if I go to the crafting page, I can go over to the upgraded axe, and you can see it takes 5 wood, 5 plant fiber, 5 stone, boom, I can craft it. And now I don't have enough stone. So now, if I go into my inventory, I can pull up the upgraded axe, and you can see, look right there, it's in my hands. If I go back to the player, boom, it's in my hands. So now when I run around, I can use the upgraded axe to hit this tree, boom, and do a lot more. I can get it in 2 swings. Or I can just use the normal axe. I can also destroy blocks like this. And you know, it's nice because right now I have things like blocks and doors in place. So if I just move this stuff around, I can get a door. It took a while to get the doors working properly. You know, I can place down some blocks. And I can also place down a door if I wanted to. And the doors work really nicely. You can just walk through them, where entities won't be able to go through it because they won't recognize, certain entities won't be able to recognize this as like a free block, but you can just walk right through it. So can probably villagers, but you know, I haven't gotten to the point of adding villagers. Speaking of entities, let me show you some of the geese. So the entity, let me see if I can find one. So the first entity I decided to add was a goose, because I was like, I'm not sure if it's not really going to be an enemy or an NPC. It's just kind of there because I want to test out all of the entity handling stuff for chunks and also the path planning. So right off the bat, here, let me explain how this works. So right off the bat, the goose, if you look over here in the scene view, it just wanders around randomly, you know, no real direction, just wanders around randomly, does what it wants. But if the player gets within a certain distance and was within the line of sight of the goose will start chasing after it. And if you're within line of sight, it's very simple and just walks right towards you, like any goose would. But if you get out of sight of the goose, as you can see in the scene view, there's these little lines that are being drawn. What it starts doing is using A-star path planning to navigate around obstacles and find the closest way to the player. And it will do this, and then at every node on the A-star, what it'll do is it'll check if it has line of sight with the player. If it has line of sight, it'll stop following A-star and just walk right towards you because it doesn't need to follow A-star. And a lot of effort went into this, not only with handling all the A-star and entity stuff for like the grid manager, but also just making sure that the path planner doesn't take up all of the computing time. Because we want to make sure that, like for a profiler, that we're not taking up a lot of time doing path planning. So right now, oh look, I attracted another goose. So you can see that every now and then we get a little bit of a spike from when we're updating our A-star, but it's not really having an effect on gameplay. And this game runs really well right now on mobile. And what I'm trying to do is make it so that even though we might have multiple geese requesting the same thing from us, requesting a path, it's not going to slow down our performance, because the way that it works is that a geese will request a path and then it'll wait until the path is accepted. So our grid manager will handle all the path requests and will make sure that multiple path requests aren't happening in the same frame. So that way we can keep our FPS pretty nicely. So if we look at this is my original drawing for the tree. It's really kind of flat and 2D-ish, which doesn't sort of fit the top-down RPG sort of style I'm going for. So I ended up switching perspective and also redrawing the entire thing to look a little bit more in my own style, which is this sort of really nice looking tree I ended up with. I'm really proud of this because it's really bright, vibrant, it's very round and eye-catching, but it doesn't overshadow the player sprite. Now also here, if you look at this, we have the rock. And the rock sprite ended up not changing very much. All I really did was redraw it and give it a different outline and just make it a little bit smoother because the original one was quite a bit pixelated. So you can see this looks pretty nice. We have different states. for the rock at different damage levels. So if we look at the initial drawing for the player, we can see that we have a nightmare mannequin setup. So originally the player was just a square, but then I made this little puppet that I could animate, and this was just to get the proportions right. And when I put it in the game, it was a spooky nightmare. And then I have this, which is another player, but it's just like it's just dressed up now with actual clothes and facial features and hair, and it looks really nice, and it looks really nice in game as well. And I can go over some of the animations I have. I have some really simple animations. So if I pull up the animations, you can see that we have a really simple setup right now. We have the player idle state, we have a player running, and then we also have a animation for the player swinging their left arm to play something, and the player swinging their right arm to play something. So it's really simple. I also did animations for the goose, just a couple base ones, just to make it look nice, where we just have, once again, we have a nice little idle state, and a nice little run state, just to give it a little bit of motion, so that way when the goose is chasing you, it doesn't just feel like a static image is chasing you. Anyways, that's everything I have to show so far for my game Agraria. Thank you so much for watching my first devlog, and I'll be posting more in the future.